Right. Which was really cool.
Are they next year?
All over Europe. I'm a language.
I will call the meeting to order at exactly 6 o'clock.
Yeah. I'll do the hair.
So we stand for the pledge of allegiance.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is approval of the minutes from December 15th, 2022. I don't know if there are any abstentions.
There's 3 abstentions.
There are a couple of abstentions.
Joanne and Vanessa.
Abstentions, but
Hold the minutes, Kathy.
everyone, is there a motion to approve the minutes from December 15th, 2022?
So moved.
Barbara. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Aye. And I know there's a few abstentions. The second order of business is the approval of minutes from January 31st, 2023. That was a special meeting that we had in lieu of our regular meeting, which was canceled due to weather. So, there's some extensions on that one too. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of January 31st, 2023?
Can you guys speak outside?
Is there a second?
I'll second Corey.
Abstentions are Barbara, Tony, and Vanessa.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes from January 31st, 2023, please signify by aye. Any opposed? All right. Now we have public input session. I believe we have some public input.
Okay. I'm Paul Miller. I'm a member of North Bethlehem Fire Department. I've been a volunteer firefighter for 55 years. I'm here to speak on the 10% volunteer firefighters tax, ambulance and firefighters tax. The 10% spread that can be provided on the different taxes that are property taxes. There's the library taxes, school taxes, the fire district taxes, as well as the town taxes, the county taxes. They each have to be approved separately for firefighters to get the full benefit of the credit. I'm here to ask you to, first phase that would be to have a public hearing for the library board. Asking that you consider doing that and moving this along. Hopefully, I've stepped out some information about it. There's a FASD, which is a Firemen's Association of the State of New York, held a webinar to explain the intricacies of this, and they also provided us with some draft resolutions, which I provided to the director, as well as legislation for the towns. So any questions anybody has, feel free to contact me. I'll leave my card with the director and Sharon and Barbara and some questions right now. What we're trying to do is to reduce the amount of loss of firefighters that we've had over the past probably 20 or 30 years. Has been pretty significant. Probably everybody in town in Guilderland knows that for the ambulances, it used to be volunteer, they're all paid now. And some of the volunteer fire departments are heading in that direction, not in town of Guilderland right now, but in some of these suburban fire districts in the area that have one, two paid firefighters, particularly daytime. There's been a lot of strain, particularly in daytime. There's a lot of mutual aid right now, marked up on McCownville, Westmere, any structure fires in those 3 districts. All 3 departments respond daytime, so it's to get us enough members for a daytime fire. That's what we have to do. And that wasn't something that was done like 30 or 40 years ago. Each department had enough members. They had people around the daytime to respond, and that's no longer the case. So this is it may not solve the whole problem, but hopefully it will be an incentive, particularly for younger members, to join, which are the ones we need and don't need people my age anymore, but that's, the younger members are what we need for an active firefighter. And hopefully this credit, if we get on the property taxes, will help them to stay in the fire department. Anybody have any questions?
I know that the town is having a public hearing on this on March 21st.
Yeah. So, some of the fire districts are having public hearings on already, scheduled, so hopefully that'll move along. And just, why don't you just gotta get ahead of this for the library board and speak to you so that we can, hopefully you consider it the public hearing and think fast. Thank you, Paul. If anybody has a question, filter them through either them or call me directly.
I'm happy to help you get in touch with Paul, but he's not hard to find. So, been a public servant for a long time. So.
So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can go either door.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment?
No, I don't have anything ready. Great.
Now, those are to accept determination of Alicia Hoffman, part-time library paid in the Access Service Department effective December 31st, 2022. And to accept the resignation of Timothy Riley, full-time fiscal officer 1 in the Administration Department effective February 17th, 2023. We have a motion to approve the personnel actions as so stated.
If we don't approve it, does Tim have to stay?
That's come up before, so that's good.
Still no, right? I'll move, but I'll also say thank you so much for all your hard work, Tim. It was really invaluable, and hopefully we'll find someone to fill those big shoes.
I mean, if we're having discussion, I want to thank him also for the help with the negotiations, and I couldn't have done it without him, and I'm fully understand because we have some more negotiations coming up. But
I just need a second.
I just
Before
really,
discussion.
oh,
Do we have a second? Say
Yep.
ditto to the remarks already.
yes.
Are we on to discussion now?
Yes, we are.
And may I please say something?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I want to thank Tim on his way out for all of his hard work. Tim has approached the job differently than anyone in the past, and appreciated that. In particular, he led the most collaborative open budget development process among the department heads that I have seen in my 9 years here. So thank you for that, Tim. He also played a great support role in the negotiations with the 2 units of CSEA. And as a side note to that, he implemented those contracts so quickly that they came during the first pay period right after the holidays. It was actually a classic case of under promise, over deliver, because he promised them one pay period later, but he got them done. And I think everybody appreciated that at the holidays when there's a lot of extra travel and gift giving expense and so forth. So thank you for that, Tim. Perhaps the major contribution that he's made is that he was the first person who was able to really wrangle our various concerns and problems, with the exception of David Gilliam, who got us most of the way there. But Tim solved our problems with the New York State retirement system. Voluntarily went to a day-long training at Town Hall for organizations that participate in New York State retirement. I am embarrassed to say I didn't even know it was going on, but I knew Tim was going. I hadn't heard about it through other ways. And then he just would not take no for an answer when the New York State retirement said, oh, well, it doesn't really matter that much. You know, it might matter for $5 per employee per monthly check in the 2030s, but that $5 could be worth. And so we're squared up with our New York State retirement system, thanks to Tim. So he was here a short amount of time, but did a great job. And Tim, I wish you the best of luck at your next position. So, thank you, everyone.
So I echo.
If we vote no, does that mean he can stay here?
Make me feel bad.
Really, I appreciate your perspective on the negotiations so much. Obviously, everything else you're done for the library.
So is there any more discussions? Thank Tim very much for his service here. So all in favor, even albeit reluctantly, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? Okay. Passes at 6. Now, it's no longer here, but I think we need to, have the resignation of, the treasurer, George Wilhelm.
I have an update on that. There's actually the new development. Last night, I met with George and had a pretty long conversation about his various concerns and things. The short story of it is he has indicated he would be willing to come back at least for a while to get us through the audit and through the transition to a new fiscal officer, if the board would like him to. I was just talking to Marcia just before the meeting here, and she had suggested, and I don't know if this qualifies as a personnel matter that's appropriate for executive session, but if it does, that we may want to have some discussion to just kind of, so we can kind of talk through kind of his concerns and things in a
Bless you.
public setting, if that is appropriate.
Well, I think for now, if you say he is willing to stay for a little while, then we can table the acceptance of his resignation.
Barbara has her as well.
Thank you, John.
Barbara, did you have something?
Barbara?
Oh, I was gonna suggest the same thing, Kathy, if we could table it. And then we could, have a discussion in executive session afterwards. But from a personal standpoint, I'm so glad that he's willing to transition until, things sort of settle in fiscally.
Okay, well, we don't have an executive session scheduled.
You know,
Good, but
I-
I don't know if we really need to discuss this at this time because we're tabling his resignation and he's willing to come back. So maybe we can, if that discussion needs to take place, maybe we could have it at a subsequent meeting or
Whatever,
I don't know if we have,
Well, I would be glad to withdraw my request for an executive session, but I do think there are a number of things that have to be discussed based on some correspondence that we had. I think it's terrific. He's willing to help us get through the audit and to help us until we find a new treasurer. But there are some issues I think that need to be discussed.
Is there any need for him in the next month if we table this to the next meeting? Because I
Well,
just don't know if,
I mean, I guess if, he's said basically he's willing to kind of rescind his resignation. And so if we don't accept his resignation and then we just let him know, he can just show up at the next meeting or start doing it. I mean, because, right? I mean, if he kind of, I don't know how that works exactly, but if we never actually accepted his resignation, and he kind of says he'll rescind it, then I think he's just still the treasurer, right? We had situations in the last couple of years where we had board
Right.
members resign and then unresign shortly afterward, and I don't remember how exactly that worked, but it happened more than once in the last year.
Yeah.
So it seems like the same kind of situation.
I think if he's happy with us being able to address the concerns in about a month's time, but in the
Yeah.
meantime, still be helping us. I don't see, yeah.
He can withdraw it.
I would ask either of the Tims, if there is, if you foresee a need in the next month, anything audit or budget related that would be helpful to have a person in the fiscal position that you could foresee.
I'd have to just slightly correct you and say in the treasurer's position.
Or yes, yeah,
so,
sorry.
I personally think that the audit is essentially completed. I don't have any problem with George coming back. And, it certainly would be helpful to have him as a backup to bounce questions off of in the next month or 2 months, however long it takes. I do have to say that my gut feeling is, as a non-employee, this would by definition not be an executive session matter. Okay. I think we should check on that, but the only reason I know of for executive session related to personnel is if you're going to discuss particular individuals' compensation. And as a volunteer, I don't think this would qualify.
And his staying on is not contingent upon anything.
No, just if the board, wants him to come back, he's willing to come back.
So none of the things in the letter needed to be addressed in order for him to stay or. He's willing, he just said he's willing to come back if the board would like him to.
I think they're two separate issues.
Yeah.
He's willing to come back if we need him for the audit. And until, my understanding, Mike, is that until we can find someone to replace him. Was that?
Well, it's kind of indefinite. He just said, he'd come back for, he didn't want to commit to, an indefinite time, but at least for a while, he'll come back and get us through transitions and things and then.
That's fine. And that's one issue. The other issue is the one I raised. Namely, there was some correspondence that I think needs to be discussed by the board.
Okay, well, it doesn't sound like that's an urgent matter at the moment. We'll just table his approving his resignation, or we'll just not vote on that and
Should we take down our webpage where we're trying to recruit a treasurer?
No, because he just said he'll help in the interim.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's an indefinite help yet. So leave it up, I would say.
I suppose we can, see if we get any more interest on that. I mean, that's been up for what, a couple weeks or at this point?
About a week. So
Barbara has raised her hand again.
Kathy, I just make the motion then to table the motion. Need a second and then we just vote and move on.
we need a motion to table.
Mhm.
Motion, I guess I'll second.
Oh, you can just withdraw the move, doesn't matter.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Did
We miss a personnel action, though.
I'm sorry.
Did we miss a personnel action?
We voted on
I'm sorry, I didn't realize we voted on them together.
All right, well, I guess the motion is to table or withdraw, so, tabling or withdrawing this, this particular, item, in favor? Aye. All right. It is so tabled or withdrawn. All right, then we move on to treasurer's report for December 2022 and January 2023.
Yes, I'll speak to that for a few minutes if you like.
Sure.
First of all, December statements in the packet, things that got separate, that didn't. Wrapped in those,
Yeah, separate.
separate, so. December balance sheet. So, at the point of December closing, the funds that were going to be invested were still reflected separately, and there's some further board resolutions. So those are the NBT bank accounts of 600,000, 438, 419. And you'll see in January that 600 moved up to the LPL, and then February the 438, 419 will reflect that at the next meeting in March. About February results. So that's moved ahead. You'll also see in December grants receivable of 311. We'll see that number now at 250 as we've received some of the cash from those grants related to the project. The 250 is one last remaining. It's a SAM grant from DASNY, and the last I understood, they had everything they needed to make it to the next step and additional payment to us. So maybe in the coming 4 to 8 weeks, we'll see something there. So that's the highlights of the balance sheet. I'm gonna go right to the January income statement. This is a year-to-date discussion more so usually anyway. I'm gonna speak, I will speak to January in that, the total expenses were spent by 19,923, and that's despite an excess in payroll related to the retro that Tim had referred to earlier, with the closing of the Unit 1 contract for the $28,000 with the July 1 of 2022, paid on the first year of January. Thus, we were over in the month of January, but if you look to the right, they're still under year-to-date basis by nearly $50,000. Not much else to highlight there. We did underspend on the auditor fees. I think that's timing because they haven't wrapped up in January as they have past years. So we'll probably see something with the rest of the next couple of weeks, or in March, we'll see the final payment with that on a year-to-date basis. Yeah, year-to-date, we're underspent 132, but our revenue year-to-date is also under 121. The data is at a benefit of 11,000. 21 on the revenue side. I know about around a little bit, so probably if I lose you. Part of the underspend there is the tax tertiary of 84,973 that have to be applied. Any questions on the balance sheet or income statement? The check register, there are notes on the December one and January one. I just need to a few items there. I did not get noted before commission. For the fall, way down or so on the first page, there's a support for the Puka, saying that correctly. They sell us the and service the self-service checkouts. Requested that we buy a new one for the food section. I want to note that of that $7,985, I believe it was $6,200 was donated by the foundation. Out of pocket for the library, what's the difference between the two? A little further down, there's a Herman Miller invoice for $7,180, and that's related to last minute, not last minute, but the last minute furniture related to the project. On the second page, there's a 20-year payment to Lee on time, $4,000, which is shared with Voorheesville, and we will be issuing them a check for, or invoice for half of that. We have to pay. New York Times insists that one organization pays the bill, and then we share it with the other organization. So we do have work to that comes to Voorheesville. All the other items are pretty standard. National Grid, Baker Taylor, those are pretty standard items. So I'm not calling them out for any reason. Any questions on either check register or the financial?
Do I have a motion to accept the check register for this December 13th, 2022 through January 13th, 2023? Marcia?
Okay.
Okay, is there any discussion? Any more questions? Hearing none. All in favor of accepting that December through January check register, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Right, the check register for January 14th, 2023 to February 13th, 2023. Do I have a motion to accept that the January to February check register? Second? Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Great. We are to the directors and department heads monthly reports.
So I have a question to ask Kathy here, before I start with the report. Tim, you can make this moot if you are staying for the whole evening, but if we're planning to head out, I would suggest we, go right to the agreement with the interim fiscal officer as opposed to doing the director's report. Because Tim has a perspective on it. So if it's okay with you.
Okay, that is under new business. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the agreement with?
Hang on, we need to discuss it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I thought there would be a discussion after.
Oh, well, we may not need the agreement.
Oh, we may not need it. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So
So we might have another table. Then we'll table the motion.
when we reached an agreement with Chris Lanchant himself, with Carol Cott, who was our previous fiscal officer, the agreement was essentially because she was retiring. Tim is not retiring and is willing to continue on a part-time basis for us. So really all we would have to do, Tim thought of this and I agree, is turn him into a part-time employee temporarily as opposed to entering into a separate contractual agreement. So that seems simpler to me. Tim, did you have anything to add?
No, we were talking about consulting agreements. And I said, well, again, I could just stay on and turn me from a full-time to a part-time hourly person. And as I work, I'll plug in my hours to Paylocity and be paid according to the agreed upon rate. Rather than a formal consulting agreement.
Okay.
Just seems a bit easier than a board resolution to give me a consulting agreement. So,
I'm fine with it myself. So
but if you disagree and feel like it's more appropriate to have a consulting agreement, then there needs to be a real resolution for that purpose, more so than there is any.
I think one very, from our point of view as an institution, minor, but from Tim's point of view, relatively important distinction is that as a part-time employee, we would continue, paying FICA and other, federal and state withholdings and so forth. Whereas if Tim does this as a consultant, it's his responsibility to report that to the tax system rather than Paylocity being used to.
And I don't anticipate a long-term, Carol was around about 6 months or better. I just want to help people transition payroll to more training sessions. Paid correctly, and again, the retirement system too. And I'm not going to be doing the day-to-day accounting of the office. It's going to be there to help support the transition really as it comes to the employees' payroll and the retirement system. Maybe a few other questions here or there, audit maybe, but
Would not be working the number of hours that would be required for you to get benefits?
I won't be on your benefits any longer.
Because, there's an hour, well, I don't need to tell you that, you know that.
Yeah, all that, I'll just be paid through the system and then the system will take the appropriate taxes out versus me having to do it.
And your compensation will be based on, or rather, your original contract?
Well, when we talked about a consultant agreement, we did set up a rate of $75, which was Carol's rate. So I would expect that, or maybe something slightly less because I want to pay the taxes on it. So we have $60 or something. Then
Okay, so you envision this as no benefits, taxes taken out, short-term
yeah,
consulting,
yeah,
basically a
just wanna
consultant.
keep it simple.
I'm just trying to understand the
Yeah.
contours
Yeah.
for your benefit.
Yeah. If I'm still even coming in the door 45 days from now in that capacity, that would.
You could always hate your other job and come back.
I could. I'm feeling the love, believe me, I'm
There's
feeling
a
the
theme
love.
here, yeah, so.
Does it matter that we just accepted his resignation?
That's a good question.
Like,
Such a stick.
saying.
Well, I think that was from the full-time.
Full-time.
Yeah, that's full time.
So then we would, at a subsequent meeting,
But we don't have an existing part-time position.
we have to create.
Right. So I don't think that
Well, then is it
that's
simpler,
simple.
is it simpler to vote on a consulting agreement? We'll do a consulting agreement. I thought it might be a little simpler for all of us, but if not, if that makes it complicated from a personnel perspective.
I'm just asking.
Well, we have
No, I-
done that.
I-
We've done that before. We have gone from part-time to full-time, full-time to part-time. We've done that in
But via accepting
certain
a
positions
resignation.
in the past, so.
Is there a way to unvote on this?
I think, I assume that the part-time position would need to be created and then filled.
Barbara has a question.
Sure.
Kathy, I just had a few questions, sort of follow up what Marcia was saying. And Tim mentioned that as a consultant, the consultant is responsible for FICA and, those taxes. I guess I just have a question on the health insurance. If are there guaranteed number of hours that he'd be available? Whatever is better for, for Tim is fine by me, but I think we should understand, what we're voting on, really. From what Vanessa said, you can't go from full-time to part-time. I don't know if that's true or not. Or if you can just reduce your hours. Those are so basic questions, and I was just, following up on, Marcia's questions there.
No, he already said he wasn't going to be taking any benefits. The question I raised was he working enough hours to be able to qualify for benefits? His comment was he's not asking for it.
I'm not asking, and the answer would be no anyway.
Yeah.
I would not be
Yeah.
working the number of hours. to
25 hours a week is,
Right, is below, I think it's 30 hours.
well, it's 25, but Tim's not going to be working
No,
25.
I'm not gonna.
Right, so the question is, how can we work out having it? We don't have a part-time position for this, right?
Then make me a consultant, and we'll copy Carol's agreement and we'll move forward.
And that's what's
I don't
in
want to
it.
belabor anything. I don't want to make any,
Oh, no,
I mean, I'm
Or
not,
to-
I
you know,
thought it would be easier this way, apparently not.
That would mean no
No, I'm
taxes.
going for the
no
easier
taxes
way. I'm
taken
going-
out.
that's right.
But, why can't he just reduce his hours, temporarily, to carry us through? I don't know, we have to sort of make it super complicated.
Because we're switching from salary to hourly, it requires a new agreement. We're just gonna match the old one.
Well, it would require moving me to hourly and moving me to a new hourly rate, because as a consultant, I would insist on a higher rate.
Yeah, on a 1099, right?
Well, I think a motion could be crafted to that effect. I mean, and creating a position and filling for Tim. I mean, I don't see it being complicated at all. I mean, I don't think we don't have, I assume you weren't thinking we were gonna do it tonight, or were you thinking of,
No, not necessarily.
because, we have to.
I really don't think it would be an issue had the board not voted to accept his resignation. Although technically he's an employee through tomorrow, even with what you've accepted, because tomorrow's his last day.
The board have the authority to create a part-time position?
Wait, I'm just looking at Robert's rules, briefly. It says the motion to reconsider is one way that a governing body may change a motion for a decision that's already made. So we could do a motion to reconsider the motion to accept his resignation. And if we approve the motion to reconsider, then we go back to the resignation and deny it. And then we could do a third motion to say that he's going part-time. And then we've accomplished that within this meeting.
And then whenever he's actually done, we do another resignation.
Yeah.
Or is there like a simple way to just approve we're hiring a contractor as a totally separate role?
Well, there's a form there.
Contract.
Yeah.
You can
Contract
contract.
is the copy.
If he's a contract.
To reconsider personnel action.
I signed it, but I'm saying instead of like undoing a vote and then redoing it, we just create a new position and
Yeah.
approve that. And that's what I mean.
Kathy?
You want to simplify?
Kathy?
That's creative.
Yeah, right.
Kathy?
Yes.
I think Marina has given us a legal, clean way to solve the situation with her motion to reconsider. And we're on our way. And, you know, we'll go with what Tim has suggested. She has figured out a legal way to do this without any complications.
And in fact, Mike has moved, to my understanding.
And it's seconded. We're nearly there.
Mike, you have moved to rescind,
I guess motion to reconsider the personnel action.
reconsider.
I guess, and I would move that we approve only the first of the two personnel actions and not
Yes.
the Tim Riley's resignation.
Second.
Okay. Okay,
All in.
let me just clarify. This is a motion to reconsider the acceptance of Tim Riley's resignation as far as our personnel action. Okay. Is there discussion? All right. So we will rescind the personnel action accepting the resignation of Tim Riley. That's the motion? Okay. All right, all in favor?
And approving the, you have to include the they were together, so.
Yeah, we voted on together, so I think we just want to be clear, we are still accepting the
Accepting the
termination of yes, what was it, a part-time page?
Okay,
But we're not accepting the resignation of Tim Riley on reconsideration.
okay, with that clarification. All in favor of the motion to do so?
I,
Anyone opposed? Okay. The resignation of Tim Riley is rescinded as of 6:38 PM.
Welcome back, Tim.
See, you got what you wanted.
About that.
So now, what's the next step that we have to, we move to change his status from full-time to part-time effective, whatever, after tomorrow, is that?
Effective, I guess that would be the following, well, Monday's a holiday, so.
just think it is.
Just the
Yeah.
18th, yeah.
The 18th, oh, okay, but I guess it doesn't matter if it's a Sunday. Or Saturday, it's just a weekend. All right, effective the motion would be effective the 18th, February 18th, 2023.
Would we normally vote to have someone go part-time?
I don't think so. I haven't faced it very often.
Well, I'm just thinking, and when we had, I think we had those situation that came up, I think, with some of the maintenance or one of the maintenance people where someone, we moved from full-time to part-time and then back part-time to full-time, or maybe it was the other way around. And each of those times we took a vote on that to approve or I think that was converting one full-time position to two part-time positions.
Yeah.
and-
Right,
and then
it was
the
a
other-
hire though. was
Yeah.
Involved in it.
Yeah.
Or going from part-time to full-time has a budget implication.
Yeah, well, this, I mean, I know that this, in the end, it's gonna be a lot less because he's going to part-time, but, we are changing his payment structure from salary to hourly at a different rate and things. So it seems like makes sense that it's something we probably need to vote on, I would think.
If we rescind his full-time, his resignation from his full-time job, and then I guess the next motion is to make him a part-time employee, but based on some hourly fee that's would not prorate the full-time, this doesn't make sense to me.
Let's just do it and be done.
I mean, why don't we just leave the resignation? He's resigned, and then
We already just did it. Literally.
have a vote to give him a consulting contract.
That
Which
would be-
lays out
Just stuck with the original plan.
which lays out his hourly rate, the fact that he doesn't have any taxes removed or anything like that, just takes him off the books as an employee and makes him as a consultant, which he's perfectly willing to do. You go from full-time to part-time, you know, how do you handle that from a financial perspective? I don't know the answer to that, but it makes no sense to me, frankly. But, you know, if we get to where we go by 6 motions, it's okay with me.
So basically, the next step is that we have to create a new contract with whatever the
It wouldn't happen tonight
past, okay.
because there's no draft. There's no contract to approve tonight, correct?
Correct.
We'll take it on faith. You take it on faith that you'll work without a contract till we get one done? I mean, you know, I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. You will not?
So basically,
Sorry,
be on
please
a
move at
hiatus
snail's
for a month.
pace. You know, I could be here 6 months before you get a contract.
I don't care how you do it. I'm just saying, if you go from full-time to part-time, it's not, the economics don't seem to work.
I don't know where you're coming up with that, Marcia. I'm just moving. I'm
I
going
withdraw my
into the
comment.
system.
I withdraw my comment. Let's do it, Joe. It's fine. It's fine.
So where we're at, he'll just be on a month hiatus until we get something in place and vote on it and approve it at the next meeting.
No, that's not, no.
But
that's
can we
not.
just make a
Go from
motion
full-time
today to?
To part-time.
make
then
a-
he's
Just
part-time.
asking a question, everyone's got
I know.
emotions on their face.
This is why you're leaving, right?
Make a motion to give Tim the power to write up a consulting agreement and move ahead, and I'll start when he has that done next week. Or you can make a motion to make me a part-time employee in the system, and that can be done immediately.
Okay, that's fine with me. I withdraw my comments.
I don't know that you all have to make a motion that you have to read the contract that he writes up for me. It's gonna be identical to Carol's for the most part. So
We can put that in the motion?
I move to approve Tim changing to part-time status as effective with the 18th.
I just want you to be careful to specify which Tim.
Yes. I move that we approve his change from full-time to part-time status effective the 18th.
Moves to part-time status as of the 18th.
Seconded.
Second, Marcia.
Okay, so we have, is there discussion on this?
Was there a second? I didn't hear a second.
yeah,
Yes.
second, probably.
Yes, there is.
Mike,
You made the motion, right?
Yes.
And the seconded, yes, Joe. You seconded. Okay. All right, so if there's no more further discussion, all in favor of the motion to give Tim Riley part-time status as of February 18th, 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, Tim, you're part-time as of 6:24 p.m.
Thank you.
Or, actually, no, because not till the 18th.
Yeah, not to the 18th. One other unrelated question before we go on to the agenda. Do you find the finance committee reports as budget review?
Yeah.
You want me to stick around long enough to Anything on that topic?
Probably would be
Yeah,
good
okay.
for you to do that. I don't know if you're looking to leave, maybe we could move that off. Also,
Sure, kind of like we used to do the design committee
Yeah.
before the construction people left. So, yeah, sure. If you want to give your report now,
all right.
absolutely.
So the finance committee, we met twice on the 19th and the 30th to go over the budget, and the process went pretty smoothly and resulted in the proposed budget that everybody should have received. And I guess at this point, I think it probably makes just most sense just to open it up to any questions that people want to raise about the budget rather than kind of walk through it or that. And, yeah.
It was sent via email. I don't know, Jenna, if you included it in the packet.
I think it is a good thing that in the packet. Yeah.
Right.
Mike, I guess I'm just wondering if there were any particular objectives that the budget committee took into consideration in the formulation. I mean, like, I know we had talked at one point, relationship between the budget and long-range planning and visioning. I don't mean to say those words because it's been
So,
tested lately.
If for this particular budget, the total amount of the tax levy that we're asking for is basically the, the maximum statutory increase that we're allowed to do as we did last year for that. That, gives us some extra funds that are in the capital reserves line at the end. That's kind of the balance that isn't allocated to any particular lines. That is kind of what's left over there. We have been discussing, we discussed this a little at the meeting. What we really need to do is this is kind of a project, and probably a project for whenever we get a new fiscal officer. But what we really ought to be doing going forward, and it's just kind of moving toward kind of best practices, is doing some projections into the future of what our eventual kind of capital needs will be way down the road whenever it's eventually time for major renovations and things like that, and other expense, and also other potential future expenses like the tax certiorari issue that hit us this year, and to specifically budget for those, those things going forward, to create funds for those, look at best practices as far as how much money we should be setting aside each year based on our budget and our projected needs. And then rather than just kind of, because the way it's been done, at least these last 2 years, and I think for a while, back, is it's just been whatever money is left over based on, the tax levy increasing, regardless of really how that, relates to what we ought to be, looking for. So we want to shift toward that, but, we're not there yet. We haven't done any of the work that's needed to kind of, do it the right way. And so ideally, that would be a project when we get the new fiscal officer to kind of, and then hopefully by next year's budget, ideally, we would be in a position to say, okay, here's the reserves we currently have on hand. Here's our kind of projection of what we're going to need into the future. Here's how much we should try and to be trying to put aside each year to reach that. And then, then we can kind of adjust our, our tax levy and everything on that basis, rather than just kind of, being just the number, whatever is left over between what we're allowed to get and what we budgeted for other lines. So, that's kind of the short answer is, we haven't done any of that work yet, but that's the hope, is to kind of, move toward a more, I guess, responsible, approach.
Mike, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
Mike, I know we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about 4 or 5 things that I asked, to maybe check up on. I obviously didn't take my notes with me down here, but one of the things I remembered was the maintenance line, where most of our warranty coverage apparently has pretty much evaporated except on motors. Were you able to check with Lou on that, or have any additional information on that and, some of the other questions that I asked you?
No, I have not, and this, I think, is this on the line, the building and maintenance supplies line? Is that the one you're talking about, or?
It's the line,
Speaking about the building and Maintenance line.
the one that was reduced, I think, by $5,000 or thereabouts.
Oh, okay, so that's
There were
the,
two lines. One has like materials, the other one has a larger budget.
There was building, account 5091, building maintenance supply, about 19, and that was based on trends of the last couple of years. And the building cleaning and maintenance, which dropped to 300, again, looking at trends.
I think it was around 35,000 or something, if my recollection is correct.
35,000, I don't know what you're.
Oh, it's the building equipment and maintenance, 37,000 and 30.
That's the one. Yep.
6,000.
It only dropped by 53.
Yeah, but only dropped by 5,300, that's my point. That's based on trend data.
And I was just thinking, but our prices have gone up, for average folks like us, and I know our warranties have pretty much expired. Do we really want to get in a hole with that particular line? That was just a question.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of surplus in the capital reserve fund, and any line that any board member wants to see grow, we can make grow. I was just following trend data to present something realistic as the trend path. So
This isn't a
I don't
final-
have any data from any of the staff or myself that warrants increasing it, other than your concern expressed just now. So again, the surplus in the capital reserve fund, any line you want to pad with more, we can pad with more. I'm not married to this budget. I will be living this budget. No.
Well, maybe we could just check with Lou and, pull out some of the maintenance contracts that he has. I mean, just from the standpoint of safety, I see what you're saying, that you'd take money, if we increase the line, you'd take it out of the capital reserves, and that's fine, but I just would like to see the line reflect potential expenses.
I will send Lou a note in the morning. Again, all the department heads had input into this, so I'll just second check with him.
Thank you.
I just have one other question. I don't have the prior years. When the library has taken advantage of the full, tax levy increase, what has typically been the benefit to program? I understand we just went through negotiations, and that it's a significant cost here, and it was the right thing to do to right-size salaries. But when I look at sort of the tax levy increase of 100,000 plus, and we're only increasing funding for programs and program supply 6,000, I just wanted to understand how that tracked with prior years, and how some of what you were talking about, forward planning, maybe we won't be renegotiating contracts every year, how we might be able to address that going forward.
I can speak a little to that, but I think it looked like Tim wanted to talk on that, so it probably makes sense for him to.
And I obviously don't know what Mike would say, but I think it would be helpful for all of the board to understand that in the 9 years, or I guess 10, that I've been working on these budgets, the board has always given me the directive, with one exception. There was 1 year we took like 1.75 or 1.5% as opposed to 2% on the tax levy, but they always had this goal ahead of them, which was a renovation. And so they used over, I would say every year but one of my tenure here, the idea that they needed to put as much money into capital reserve as possible, so that if the public voted favorably for a renovation or an expansion, they would have as much money as possible. And we did visit that idea a little bit last year at the budget, when the board was dealing with the full budget. And, there was one board member who thought, well, last year would be the year to not take the full 2% because we didn't necessarily have a projected need for it.
That was me, by the way.
And thank you. I didn't want to
Name names.
call anyone out, but, and then, my own personal position, not as a board member, was that, then here came the tax certiorari issue costing us about 2% of our annual budget. Actually more like 1% of our actual annual budget, but, no, 2%. But at any rate, it does seem to my mind that we don't have a goal like a renovation. And that eventually, and as I happen to agree with Mike's statement that we haven't done the due diligence to change this year, but that eventually we'll be able to put the brakes on the full 2% request because there could be a situation where we have enough reserves to cover anything that might happen. We do have still this year a potential certiorari impact of about 125,000, somewhere between 125 and 200,000. So to my personal way of thinking, this wouldn't be the year to do it either for the reasons Mike stated and also for the tax certiorari thing. But there are libraries, Albany and Bethlehem, a couple times in my 9 years have done a flat budget and just moved on to the next year. And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't have that theoretically as our goal. But I do kind of agree with Mike that there's enough uncertainty. And also, I guess I would just, you may not agree with me, but I would say with our key fiscal analyst position vacant, wouldn't be the time to make any radical changes in the way we've operated the budget for the last 9 years. There'll be someone in that position, hopefully within a couple of months. And related to all this, totally separate matter, but it goes back to the question about full-time versus part-time and changing custodians' jobs. We don't have one approach towards personnel costs in the library. So we have one large department which budgets the money that's available to them in terms of hours as opposed in terms of positions, okay? So that department hires and people leave, and all you guys do on that is approve the personnel actions because their department head took the position that, hey, I've been given this X amount of money and I'm just going to manage. And that person has a lot of turnover. That department has a lot of turnover. And so it was basically an approach that was driven by the market for available people to fill the positions in that department. All the other departments in the library look at their budget in terms of positions. When Sarah and Natalie and I talk, we would love the flexibility going forward, not necessarily with this budget or this year, to approach every department of the library that way. So that if we have trouble covering a reference desk and we're hearing complaints that we don't have enough people to cover a reference desk, rather than having, 16 people whose job title allows them to cover the reference desk, we'd prefer to have, and I'm not very good at math, so I'm just making up a number, but 200 hours a week to cover that reference desk as opposed to 16 jobs to cover that reference desk. So that's a concept that would take some development, but, and I'm not suggesting we move to it immediately, but at any rate, back to your larger question, Vanessa, the board for 9 years in a row was like, we need to put as much money in the bank as possible in case we are doing a capital project. And as we all know, we are not doing a capital project. We're done. So, and I'm not planning any capital projects or, asking for any capital projects as far in the future as I could possibly see. So unless we had some catastrophic building failure, I don't think we're in the capital business for at least the next 5 years. We just finished one, so.
Right. I just wanted to clarify, though, I guess my question was more about just our investment in expanding the program budget,
Mhm.
right? So it's only $6,000 between the program line, which is 5010, and $2,000 in 5011. I'm just talking about the change.
Mhm.
When we look at a tax levy that is adding over $100,000 to our budget. So I just wanted to understand how that compared in other years when we took advantage of the full levy. Is that a consistent investment in program? It feels small to me.
Right.
So I just,
Our,
Well, if you quantify it, it's a 20% increase. The dollar maybe looks small to you in relation to all the millions.
and that's why I'm just asking for
But
perspective.
it's-
Is it
Yeah.
consistent with?
And again, all of this comes from the input from the staff. They said we'd like more, and they put in 20% more. They want 40% more, maybe they could probably do more with 40% more, but I think we all collectively, we said, okay, we know that things have been tight. We know we just went through negotiations and asked for more money and benefits and so on and so forth. So I think they all just took that into account and still said, well, I'm gonna ask for 20% more. That sounds like a big number. You know, if you were getting a 20% raise, you'd be like, ah. So I think they all went in with that attitude. But I know they'll take more money.
And I can appreciate that they were tempering the ask. I guess I'm just saying in the context of what Tim is saying, we aren't currently saving for another capital project. And, you know, from my perspective of, you know, to me, my priorities were the investments and the staff, right? And then investments in the part of the budget that impacts the public interaction. And so it was basically just a general question of this is like a consistent increase for program.
It's actually inconsistent in the sense that I don't think I've ever presided over a 20% increase in program in 9 years.
And we're under budget this year to date, right?
Okay.
The collection budget is another good point of comparison. It has increased once in the 9 years that I'm here in terms of dollars. And it was 3 or 4 years ago, and it's generally considered adequate. But it's obviously collections and programs are the two things the public uses the most, right?
I'd just like to see us as a board consider that when we go into future budget development, right? Like where we're gonna prioritize, that's all.
I just like to put just a little more context around the issues that Tim was talking about. One thing that Tim has brought up in the past, but he didn't mention tonight, is that each year our the cap, the amount that we're allowed to increase our tax levy is based on the previous year's tax levy, so that any year that we do not use the full increase, then on subsequent years, we've reduced the total amount, you know, it's cumulative, you know, it compounds. So, it means we're reducing the total possible amount that we can do without having to jump through hoops and, give public approval on top of that anyway. So that's just, it's a consideration. And I would reframe it as, it's not that we're not saving for a future capital project. We know that we are going to have future capital expenses.
Imminent one.
It's just, right, it's just that it's right now, we're kind of flying blind because we're kind of in the dark about how much money do we need, you know, when are we gonna need it, you know, and what's a reasonable amount we should be setting aside to kind of hit those targets. And, you know, I think it's very plausible that the amount that we're setting aside right now is overshooting what we need to be doing, and maybe we do have room to, on a consistent basis, go lower than the 2%, but we just don't have the numbers to say one way or the other. So it's where do we err right now, not knowing that. And so, you know, I really am strongly in favor of us getting to that point where we have a better idea of what our future needs are, so we can, you know, if we can reduce the amount that we're, you know, asking the taxpayers to have to, you know, chip in or increase or whatever, we should, you know, see if we can do that. But right now, we just don't have all the information.
And the finance committee?
I want to leave you with this one thought too as I leave. I would recommend and encourage the board to work with the next fiscal officer, and I would do this if I were staying, to categorize these extra funds better. In other words, that 290 that's on this budget, if that's what it ends up being for the year, you don't need it for some other issues, to put that money into restricted categories. I'd also encourage you to set up at least two, one for restricted capital in the future and one for restricted, for the tax tertiaries that may come up. And I know the school had a certain amount set aside, but went well over that with the issues. And we kind of got caught by surprise because we didn't categorize them anyway that way. We have this cash, available to help us cover these things, but it wasn't really categorized as I think the board should be watching. So I would recommend that. George or whatever treasurer would also help you implement that.
I personally would
I just want
agree.
to leave you with that.
I agree completely with that, yeah.
Is there anything else?
I think we'll go back to the directors and department heads this month.
Okay, so I am doing 2 months here. I will skip some of the things because in the nature of time here. But I want to call out Sarah and Natalie. They called a meeting on site here with Albany County Civil Service. We really made some progress. Thank you, Tim. Made some progress and built good relationships there. I want to thank the Personnel Committee for all the work they did on the TCSEA contracts. It was labor intensive and we appreciate that. I don't know if it would scare you at all to say that it wasn't particularly labor intensive compared to the previous negotiation, which went into mediation. But at any rate, it certainly was a big project for everybody. I also want to mention the two nighttime custodians, Carl Z. Ibanez and John McGuire, who are doing a great job and also have an uncanny ability to be right where any crisis might be occurring on the floor. So within the last 6 weeks, Carl Z twice and John once have helped to de-escalate situations with kind of people who were sort of violating behavioral norms within the library and perhaps acting a little threatening. So that's great. I do want to point out, and I believe I emailed this, but the funds are completely, the sort of excess funds, if you will, are completely invested at this point in time. So that's good. Over to Luann. So we had 3 great art exhibits. We had the Albany Artists Group, followed by Guilderland resident Noel Payton, and now followed by Guilderland resident Bryn Marion. If you haven't seen this current art exhibit, please stop in the Helderberg room. She's really, really good for a 25-year-old painter. She will be here this Saturday the 19th, Sunday the 19th, from 1 to 4 for a little reception in the Helderberg room. In the December report, Luann reported on Facebook engagement, and we are #1 in the area after 3 libraries that are really categorically different. Albany, which has 7 branches, Schenectady County, which is a county system and has, I believe, 6, maybe 7 branches, and Clifton Park Half Moon, which is outside of our Upper Hudson library system. And covers 2 large suburban areas as opposed to 1. So our social media is performing very, very well. Lauren Vincent, the acting head of the circulation department, has been doing a great job. As you probably saw in an email, we have combined the former Phil Berardi head of circ position with Lisa Pitkin, who's the head of collection services, and created 1 department there, thus saving a salary of approximately $60,000 a year. I may be presenting fighting words, but during the December meeting, it was expressed that we weren't doing enough for the December holidays. And so in my January report, I was going to mention that around the library, I could find snowflakes, snowmen, gingerbread houses, lights out front, a virtual program on holiday decorating, a wine and wrap Christmas and Hanukkah event, a holiday card drive for community caregivers, and a Suburban Sounds concert that had Christian, also Christian Ukrainian, and also Jewish holiday music played at it. So the notion that the library is somehow the Grinch is not true from my particular point of view. In the December report from the programming department, they talk about the 20 homebound patrons who receive deliveries via volunteers. And in that particular month, 58 books. It's a wonderful service. And I wanted to just mention our volunteers, Christine Lipinski, Walt Addix, and Frank Saragalia, who do that. And also mention that we've kind of quietly partnered with the Town and County Meals on Wheels program. So Mary Ann Kelly distributes meals in our parking lot to the volunteers that distribute those, I believe 5 days a week. Brianna Wakowitz is doing a great job with the youth services teens. She has started a teen advisory group and a middle school advisory group, and the teen tech help desk is back. The various gifts of the foundation have mostly been purchased and are being used. It's wonderful. If you want to see a full library, come to our Lego Builds events. They are just amazing. And let's see, so IT has been doing a great job with cybersecurity, including a meeting and a program with the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. And they're working with the town of Guilderland Transfer Station on recycling electronics. Also doing various things to standardize and reduce software costs. Sean and his department are always good at trying to reduce costs. Self-checkout report, good to kind of mention this because we just added another self-checkout machine. Last year at this time, in the month of December, there were 6,600 transactions at the self-checkout machines. This year, and this was before the new one was installed, 10,500. So roughly a 40% increase there. There is in your December packet a report that IT put together based on the door counter. And if you want to take a look at that at some point, you will see that almost nobody percentage-wise visits the library between 7 and 9 p.m. any night compared to the people who visit at other hours of the day and the evening. So if you're still employing me in July, I will be asking you again to close at 8 p.m. And shift some of that productivity up higher into the day. There's a lot of waiting for the doors to close among the staff from especially 8 to 9, but also 7 to 9. We do have, and I have 11 pieces of paper in my folder here if you guys want them, but we have a report on the modifications that are about to start to the Norman Skill Room to start the cafe. They are under budget and everything is lined up well. It is a lot of sort of back and forth between Elisha and myself and Melanie Diaz and Joy Mercado Anderson, the co-owners of the cafe, as well as Megan Brennan. And there's been some supply chain issues and so forth, but we are on target for a late March opening. Let's see, then into the February report. I'll make this as fast as I can. I want to thank the board for agreeing to close 1 hour early on Friday, February 10th. We had 54 people from the staff and or their families here. It's a wonderful party. I want to kind of congratulate Natalie for working with the person who is her successor at UHLS. They started a quarterly program called I Work in a Library, but I'm Not a Librarian. So this is where the fiscal officers, HR people, and PR people have a chance to network with the other people who do that same specialty. And it's generally only in the larger libraries that you have those roles, because in the smaller libraries, you know, everybody wears every hat. The Collection and Technical Services Department, Lauren Vincent and Lisa Pitkin have really thrown themselves into combining those two departments. They're meeting almost every day. Lisa used to run the two departments combined about 5 or 6 years ago, but since that time we installed automated materials handling and RFID technology. So there's kind of a lot to get up to speed on with the combination of those two positions. The adult services and the youth services programming people are really offering a lot, and some of it is virtual, but a lot of it's in person. Group English as a second language classes have resumed, and AARP tax aid classes have resumed. Our winter reading challenge was exceedingly successful. We beat all the goals that we had set. So we hope that we get some funding out of that. And Beth, Diane, and Lauren did a great tour for Daisy Scouts the other night, and the young girls got to use the automated sorting machine, and they had a great time. The kids loved the self-checkout over there in the youth department. We thought it would be a good idea because the parents have, 20 or 30 books and 2 or 3 kids to corral. They don't want to corral them over in the youth department, come over here and check them out, and then have to re-corral them. But what I personally missed completely was that the kids love using the machine. It gives them a sense of being part of the process here at the library. I do mention that we love Girl Scouts, but we have to turn down requests from Girl Scouts to sell cookies, of which we've had 3 from different Girl Scout units in the last month. We have a no soliciting policy, and if we really opened up to soliciting, there would probably be 50 nonprofit groups selling something every day that came into the library. Also in, I think it's in your December packet, might be in your January packet, right toward the end, there is a page that I have written near the top, UHLS for summary purposes, and it's a UHLS issued funding chart that they issue for the state annual report at this time of year, which we're working on. But it's an excellent summary. I get a lot of questions at board meetings and finance committee meetings. Well, what are these payments to UHLS? This summarizes our revenue from UHLS and our payments to UHLS for 1 year on 1 page. So if that is a persistent question for you, take a look at that. The actual heading is Funding Chart for State Annual Report 2022, and it's in the January packet near the end. So, and that is my report. I'm happy to take questions.
Questions for Tim?
Great report.
Sorry?
Great report. I love hearing everything about the life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. We'll move on to committee reports. Alicia, anything from building and grounds?
We did not meet, but Tim already touched on it, that we have made some progress with the cafe. A lot of emailing back and forth. I know Melanie was sick for a little bit, so there was a little bit of a pause there. But it looks like we made some decisions and some progress like within the last couple of days on a hand washing station, sink station, and looks like we're on target for that March, mid-March, end of March opening. There is some longer turnaround times, just, continuing on supply chain issues and just contracting out some millworks and things like that, and just their lead times. So, but everything's looking good. We're under budget, which is great. We added that extra padding in there, so hopefully we don't have to use it all. So it's looking good.
I do have a 1-page sheet on that if you'd like me to pass it around on the budget at this point. So,
Are we doing anything to announce the opening of?
well, we will, of course, but not until we know when it's going to happen. So, anyway, yep.
Trying to save the date,
There you go. Yep. Well, we should send a save the date once we know what date to save.
I know Melanie was trying to do like a St. Patrick's Day opening, but it might go a little past that, so I don't know.
Might be an
the
April
theme.
Fool's Day.
It might be an April Fool's. Come get a
So
cocktail,
there's-
come get a cocktail, just kidding, it's.
I'm getting a mocktail.
Come get a mocktail. Oh, oh. So that's it, it's short and sweet, everything looks good.
Well, we're all looking forward to that cafe being open.
Same.
Only been working on it 10 years.
Only to
so.
decrease the email volume, but yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Okay, Barbara, anything from long range planning?
I think all of you have received a compilation that Luann was nice enough to put together from, I think, about 206 people that have responded to some, basic questions. What do you like about the library? What do you dislike? What kind of programs would you like to see? Which ones do you enjoy the most? In following up a little bit on Vanessa's question about programming, there seemed to be a lot of desire on the part of people to increase our programming. They're particularly asking for, more crafting type situations, more exercise, be it yoga or Tai Chi or any of the other things that people enjoy doing. And also, a lot of people have discussed, could we not do children's programming on weekends so that mom and dad who aren't working could now participate? So again, I think if we were to increase the programming budget, and we had, the personnel that could do it, the public would really, really enjoy it. And as I said, there are a lot of positive comments about the library. And, we'll continue to do that. The other thing, Natalie has reached out to Altamont, or Altamont has reached out to us. They're working on a long-range plan as well. And they're very much interested in what they call resource sharing. Many, many, many years ago, when I actually first came on the board, and that was ages ago, I know we had reached out to Altamont to see if we could sort of consolidate, and that Altamont, just like Albany has branches, that it would sort of be a branch of the Guilderland Public Library. And at that point in time, they weren't interested in doing it. I don't know if they would be now or if we would be. But we're trying to set up a meeting with the Altamont director just to get sort of a feel as to where they're at, what their long-range plan is, see how it consolidates with ours. And, we'll take it from there. We will continue refining. Jeez, hold on. Sorry about that. We'll continue working on the plan itself. And I think the most important thing right now, we'll try to set up a meeting with Altamont, with our team, and just sort of get some feedback from there as to where we want to go. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Science.
Oh, science.
They're on. This is really nice.
Fabulous.
Right, anything from the audit committee?
Audit committee has not met. I've been told that it's just about done, but I haven't seen it yet, so hopefully soon.
Norina, anything with personnel?
We did meet, but I don't know if this is official because we didn't have a quorum. So we did meet, the few of us that we did. We have to start negotiations with the admin. So I know the union contracts are done, but everybody else's contracts are coming up for renewal. And so it's been suggested to us that we do them together, sort of in a similar process as we did the labor negotiations. So we're starting that now. See how it goes. Just the beginning phases.
See, anything from labor management?
No, we have not.
Vanessa, anything from policy?
No, we haven't.
COVID action, I don't know if we really even, if that's a thing anymore.
Maybe
And
we should take that off on the next agenda.
we could always vote to change the committees to remove it. I think it would be,
Or we could wait till July.
yeah,
Should we wait till the winter? So.
yeah, sure. Sounds good. Haven't had a meeting for board development, recently. Probably should get back with that and, schedule a meeting because we need to, think about, what we're going to do in that regard. Anything from foundation, Narina?
I don't think that we met since the last time when they approved a bunch of expenditures, which I think we've already thanked them for that. And I'm really happy with the self-checkout machine of the kids, even for me personally, because I know I do come with the kids and it would be so much nicer to have it over there. So they made some really great donations the last time we met. And I don't know when the next one's going to be scheduled. I haven't gotten an email yet.
It's actually scheduled for February 23rd. Steve,
Didn't get it.
yeah, he hasn't sent an email. So anyway, I don't know how it got scheduled there, but it is scheduled.
Narina?
Yeah.
Just for the next time the foundation needs anything donated for like a golf tournament or something, I'm speaking to Chris, one of the owners of Orchard Tavern West. He said I'll let them know that he'd be willing to give
Cool.
certificates. Orchard Tavern West,
Nice.
yeah.
Cool, thanks.
He's a
I just
great
wanted to mention
supporter.
now before I forget,
Yeah.
but he said he would give every golf participant a pizza or something.
Very nice. We could have the 19th hole there.
There you go.
Corey, anything from UHLS?
I'm excited for what UHLS and I know Tim and Natalie and others are participating in the Legislative Advocacy Day, and that's good to get your faces in there. And Tim included more in an email that went out. And they are, if you may remember from pre-COVID that UHLS sponsored the expedition. Natalie, okay. And they're going to do that again this year. So it encourages everybody to visit as many libraries within the UHLS system as possible. And I personally plan to visit a lot of them just to see what's going on in the other spaces. And if anyone wants to ride along, I have 3 seats in my car. And
I did it the last time and I had a.
So I just think it will be really interesting to see, get out of our bubble here and see what other folks are doing too. Spaces are
You
like.
could have a prize for the board member who visits the most.
Heck, yeah. Sounds wonderful.
When's that starting?
I believe it's starting in the summer. I don't think they've announced the start date yet. But I'll report back when there's a firm start date.
It's really fun. I did with my mom.
Big little punch cards.
You get a map and they stamp it.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
I think they should have a prize. I've told them this before, but they should have a prize not just for the first person to complete the expedition, but for the person who can map it out in a way that they visited the libraries using the fewest possible miles.
UHLS has a board of trustee member that is works for AAA, and she is potentially going to see if they can assist with.
They
A
do
triptych.
have that.
Like a triptych?
Yeah, so we'll see if that comes to fruition.
I was thinking a bingo card, right? Like a randomized, like.
We're into old business, and I should mention that I did have a conversation with regard to the term length for Board of Trustees. I had a conversation with Tim Burke, and he followed up with an email. He told me that changing the term from 5 years to 3, if the board still wants to do that, requires a rather formal motion. And actually, I would have to sign it at the meeting, and Jenna would have to notarize my signature at the meeting. So it's like very formal. And he gave me the language, but he gave a caveat, and which was interesting. He said that if we were to like vote, say, tonight, and we decided to change to 3-year terms, it goes to the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents next meets on April 17th. And apparently, if they kind of rubber stamp these things, and initially he had told me it would take 6 months. So then all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe it would show up at the April 17th meeting. But the problem with that would be if we were to vote tonight, just to go to 3-year terms. And then it would go to the Board of Regents on April 17th. If they kind of rubber stamped it on that night, it would take effect immediately, which would mean that whoever was running for the board this May would have already had to do their petitions. I think it probably would have been right around that time that they would have to turn them in. So the thought, Tim Burke was saying that what would happen is that it would change it like a month before the election potentially. So that didn't seem very good or practical, or it sounded very confusing. So the suggestion was to put this off until the reorganization meeting in July, and then consider that motion, the formal motion, as to whether or not, you know, if the board wants to go to a 3-year term, then they would, the motion would be considered in July. And then it would take effect for the next election season. If it was changed, it would be 3-year terms in the next July. But of course, since we have an 11-member board and not a 9-member board like the school board, 3-year terms would mean, like, some years there would be 4, obviously, 4 seats available. So it would be a little bit mathematically slightly confusing, an 11-member board as opposed to like the school board, which is a 9-member board, and every term is 3 years, and there's 3 people every year that either run for re-election or, you know, their seats are available. So that's just what I found out. So that was the thought. I mean, if the board is amenable to that, just putting that off until July.
When is the next Regents meeting after April?
They meet quarterly, so I don't know, whatever that would be.
Probably July. It's
Yeah.
April.
Yeah, so, but I mean, it wouldn't really matter because it would be only be concerned for the election. So, whether it took place in July or in the fall or something, it would still, if we changed to 3-year terms, it would take effect before the next
Right.
election. So it wouldn't need to be like in the summer per se.
So I have a couple questions. And one is, did you say that Tim Burke has like the language of the resolution that we would have to
He does.
do? Because I would just like to see that just so I can see through it. And I have some questions, and I don't know if the language of that would answer any of these questions or not, but I'm just curious about the transition from our current terms. If we approve this to go to the shorter terms, is the suggestion that the existing terms that are already in effect would also be truncated, like to,
Can't
like,
do that.
See, that's
Well,
the
what I'm
very
trying to ask, because-
confusing thing. Yeah.
because if that's not the case, then the upcoming election doesn't even matter. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. But the way you were talking, it was suggesting that people were going to be up for election who didn't expect to be up for election. It was going to change things. I also wondered, I haven't mapped it out, but again, given that we're currently on this 5-year cycle, so we have 4 years with 2 people being elected and 1 year with 3 people being elected, depending on when the transition happens, how are they all going to line up on a new 3-year cycle? Because hopefully we'd have them be relatively even and have like 4, 4, and 3, rather than 1 year there's only 2 and another year there's 6 or something, crazy thing like that. So it'd be nice to kind of understand logistically, how does it work exactly, so we can figure out what's going to happen and maybe adjust if we need to make it work
I
right.
wouldn't think they'd retroactively take back what you wrote, the term.
I wouldn't have thought so either. That's why I was.
Well, I
But you
interpreted,
can't,
I-
like, but I think what would happen is you'd have people serving 5-year terms, and then you'd have people serving 3-year terms. So you'd have like for a certain number of years, you'd have a disconnect with the lengths of terms on the board.
well,
like
we
people-
kind of already do with with resignations. But I took what Kathy said to mean that those positions that are up for election this year, they would start off petitioning for a certain set year, whether it was a partial 5 years because they were replacement or a full 5. And then when that went into effect, it would norm to a 3. So it wouldn't be about us existing, it would be about the ones that are up for election.
The people who were duly elected for 5 years.
Right, no, I know. I was just saying that I think it's about the new.
It's a prospective.
Can I throw in a variable here?
Sure.
So I spoke to Linda Livingston, I don't know her title, but she's the front office employee at the school district who prepares the ballot. And she said, well, and she was nice about it, but she said, I cannot legally put out a ballot with 3-year terms on it because I put the ballot out around March 1st. And even if the April 17th meeting is a rubber stamp, she has no authority until that rubber stamp occurs to create a 3-year term. So it would be moot if you voted on it tonight anyway. It would still be a 5-year term until the Board of Regents rubber stamped it. So.
I just think prudence demands that we wait until after the election. The election occurs in May. You'd have a June meeting that, you could consider this. You'd have the language worked out. The timetable, as Mike has pointed out, it would be laid out cleanly and clearly. There's no harm in waiting. So I think I'd follow Tim Burke's recommendation and hold off at least until, after the election.
I'm fine waiting. I guess I'm just curious if we've done, I wasn't at the last meeting, if we've done the math on what the term lengths are for the upcoming vacancies. Because it could also be, it could be like 3. One of them's a 1-year, one of them's a 2-year. Like it could be less of an issue than. Have we done the math
Well,
on?
they would all be 5 years because unless we have a new resignation,
Oh.
so everything coming up for election is.
I'm
Yeah,
like
when we-
yeah.
programmed from the prior years
Yeah,
where
yeah.
there's always. But how many vacancies are there?
2.
2, okay.
We once had a Zoom meeting where we had at least 3.
Kathy's saying
Maybe
there's still
4.
time for some resignation.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, that won't happen because, that was very unusual to have so many resignations in a short period of time.
In terms of Mike's ask, you and I can get together and map out when people would be leaving and what that would look like.
So
3 years.
statistically, it won't actually matter. Like this will fall into the same pattern of rollover. You're just gonna have more people up for election, but it's always gonna balance out. Like mathematically, it will continue to work out.
Are you?
If
sure?
this cycle is elected as a 5-year term, then in 5 years, there's gonna be extra people up for election. But
Right.
there will continue to be at
But
least
the-
2 to 3.
The issue is you could get it, it could be lumpy. Instead of having 2 years with 4 and 1 with 3, you could end up having a 6 and a 2 and a.
it would be like
whatever,
a
like
3.
uneven, just depending on how they.
It would
fall.
be, yes, it would be 3, 3, 5. Yeah,
Which
it would be
isn't
lumpy.
terrible, but
But
it's
that's
not
only
ideal.
until, that's forever.
No.
That's
Yeah,
forever.
Once that happens, then it'll just.
Good news is we have until July to figure out the math.
Well, I think, as I recall, maybe other people were at these other meetings that the possible reason for wanting to go to 3-year terms was because there were so many resignations all in a group, and it was thought, I don't know if I'm remembering it correctly, but I thought it was more because there was a thought, well, maybe people would be more comfortable serving 3 years instead of 5. I don't know.
I don't know anyone's intent or mind on the resignations. I don't think it had anything to do with the length of time.
You don't think so?
Well,
Would
I-
not be opposed to 3.
I would agree with that. It had nothing to do with that. It was personality all the way.
Well, I think that's like, that may be true in the what prompted it, but I think there's a different, how much time somebody has left on their term may influence whether they're willing to stick it out till the end.
Correct.
So, you know, if you're on a 3-year term, you know, and you only have a year and a half left, you might say, okay, I'll put up with it for another year and finish out my term. But if it's a 5-year term and you're looking at another 4 years or 3.5 years or whatever, then somebody might be, well, I'm just going to resign.
I
So I'm not
get
going to
that,
stick
but
out, you
I'm
know?
saying,
So, and on the front end, there may be people who are dissuaded from
Right.
running in the first place because they say 5 years, that's a long commitment, you know, with 3. So we might get more interest in the front and maybe forestall some resignations in the middle by people who don't have quite such a long runway. There was also a second reason behind the potential switch for 3, and I don't know if it's something that people are still interested in or pushing for, but there was, at the time when this came up, when we talked about it last year, there was a push by a few of the board members of wanting to reduce the total board size from 11 members possibly down to 9. And
Still for that.
yeah,
and one of the concerns that you know, I say this because I was one of the people that raised this particular concern, was that if we kept the 5-year terms but reduced down to a 9-member board, it would mean some years you only have one single board member on a 9-member board up for election, which really doesn't seem appropriate for, you know, giving, you know, public accountability in elections and everything. And going to 3-year terms would mean you could have, you know, a higher.
First step.
What's that?
It was like the
Right.
first step.
So
in
the idea is
considering.
if we're going to go to 9, we should do the term length first, and then that gives us the opportunity to cleanly go down to 9 without, you know,
Because otherwise you'll have an election cycle with no one being elected.
yeah, or, you know, depending on how uneven things are or whatever, yeah. So it seems like if you're gonna sequence it, you wanna reduce the term length first and then reduce the board size rather than the other way around.
Okay, well, something to think about while we're going to do this, or vote on this in July. I will send all the language around to the board. Like I said. Formation of grand opening committee. I know that there's been talk about that. I wasn't sure what the proposed, membership was. Did you want to speak to that, Tim? I mean, I really
Sure.
just don't, or maybe somebody else,
I'll
has
just
been thinking about this.
start the discussion. You know, it's still, I think, the desire of a lot of people, both in this room and outside of this room, to have some sort of a grand reopening after the renovation. And spring is approaching, and we'll have the cafe opening. And you know, last time, I think we suffered a little bit from lack of a central vision. If I remember right, it sort of started in the foundation, which arguably, I mean, the foundation is wonderful, but maybe the board is the place for it to really start. I think that it was clear the last time that we needed to involve 3 or 4 key staff members from the beginning, so that we're all getting together to plan the same thing. And I don't really have a recommendation to give to you in terms of the size of such a group, except that I think it should have some board, some staff, and some foundation members on it, would be kind of my gut thought. But you know, that group, I think, needs to sit down once a group is formed. It could be as little as 3 people, 1 board member, 1 staff member, 1 foundation member. I think 6 might be a little better and more inclusive, but needs to sit down at a table and say, okay, we need to do something, we want to do something, let's brainstorm. Instead of different efforts starting, you know, in the boardroom, the foundation room, and arguably in the staff room. So I'm not trying to point any fingers. I would like to just move forward, water under the bridge, but I think we should do something for our community. And that's my side of it, my take or my perspective on it. I honestly can't remember how it got on the board agenda, but I think, wasn't it, it's old business, so it's coming back up from a previous board meeting.
I think I opened that can of worms.
Okay.
Asking when
When
we
we're gonna
needed
do
to
something.
revisit that topic, because
Okay.
it was sort of tabled for a while.
Yeah.
And then I know Noreen and I had done some work on that.
Yeah.
And we realized how disjointed the
Yeah,
different groups' perceptions of what was gonna happen was, and we scrapped it for a little bit and then wanted to kind of get back to it
Yep.
with this newly formed committee so that everybody had like sort of a way to connect with each other because conversations were happening separately. And there was a
Yeah.
lot of like, oh, we're understanding it to be this, and then people
A
take.
game of
people and roll it.
telephone in some ways, you know?
Yeah, it didn't work out very well. So this way people have a little more agency together cohesively and then, we can support where needed. But I think the desire was for the staff to lead it more
Okay.
so.
Mhm.
I think from the staff as well as, I know Norina and I were just, from the board perspective, saying, makes sense for the board to support and then the foundation to fund.
Mhm. So the staff to do or the foundation to fund and the staff to kind of come up with the
Yeah,
contracts?
since
Okay.
they're more familiar with their own bandwidth and capacity, and then the board to support however we need, if it's helping for care, entertainment, or whatever, whatever that may be, right, Norina? That's kind of where we landed. I don't know if she can hear me.
Yeah, sure.
So just, when it says formation of grand opening committee, was that, going to, designate a certain number of, people of different groups to be on it? Was there going to be, a certain number, of, like, mostly staff and?
I would say mostly staff, 1 to 2 board, and like, I don't know how big the foundation is these days, maybe 1 foundation member. Because I don't know if they're still running pretty small. I think asking for 2 might be a little much. Norina, how many people are in the foundation at this point?
Well, that participate to the meetings, I think quorum is 6 and we really very rarely have quorum, which is why we meet so rarely, so.
1.
I think 1 is fine.
Yeah.
It's very vocal in the foundation, so.
So that, I would assume, would be the proposal, right, committee,
Mhm.
maybe 3 staff.
Do we want to,
2 staff, someone from admin, right? 2 board and a foundation member.
so 3 staff, 2 board, 1 foundation? And then do we want to sort of send out an email to all 3 groups, 1 email saying for volunteers? And that way you don't have to, if there's 3 board members who want to be part of it, first of all, I welcome 3 board members, but secondly, like, we wouldn't spend this time saying, well, let's take these 2 of the 3,
Right. I thought
I think
that,
starting out.
that
with
it was
emails,
just going to be
just
like
approving
the
formation.
proportion of different groups that would be on it. So the staff would be,
If it's primarily a staff committee, does the board need to vote or decide on the organizational structure? Or are we thinking that that would be helpful?
I think it's on the agenda, in my opinion, just because we wanted to include everybody in sort of shaping, but I don't think we need board authority to establish it. So,
Is there any merit to having anyone from the community?
it's not a bad idea.
I don't know how you would, be able to advertise that, but, someone from the community might be very useful.
Kathy,
yes.
just a quick question. To me, this is almost anticlimactic because we've been open so long. Could we not maybe center it around the cafe opening? Because usually when you have a grand reopening, be it a grocery store or a school or whatever, what happens within a month or so of the grand opening. And as I said, it just seems anticlimactic at this point to have a grand opening for the library because we've been open now in our new building for months. But there is a lot of interest, I think, in the cafe, and maybe could we center it around the grand opening and then still show off the library for those who haven't seen it, but have the emphasis more on that than, the building itself.
I think this came up already previously, and the foundation, I think, we're not wanting to fund a cafe opening since it's a vendor versus a library opening, which is their purpose for being here.
And I just want to add too, that part of the reason for the delay also was COVID and people's reluctance for a huge gathering, right? Like first we were able to be outside, but that window closed pretty quickly. So, I mean, I personally don't find it that problematic, especially for those who haven't made it back to the library yet. It'll be just as exciting for them. And I think an event like that would draw the attention that we want for the library. I also think that there's still some uncertainty around when the cafe will be ready to go. And so to me, planning again around that feels like setting ourselves up a little bit, where we just pick a solid date into the future and work towards it. I mean, any day is a great day for a grand reopening.
Yeah, I think it's staff-centric, not cafe-centric. And I think that this gives the staff the sense that this is their event, really.
Yeah, we want to definitely empower the staff on
We
that.
always
And I
say the
think-
library is the
Yeah.
staff, so.
And then secondarily, there could be some cafe component, but it shouldn't be the focus, I
Yeah.
don't think, because I know
Catering.
Mel was starting to help towards the end there, so I know she'd be amenable to helping out regardless of if the cafe's up or running or not in some capacity, and it could be her intro to the community at that point, you know? But yeah, definitely library-centered staff.
Do you have the staff's input on this? Because I remember last time, that's what sort of pumped the brakes on the whole thing, because they did have programs and this was taking up a time that they were gonna devote to other things that they were doing for the library. So if we're gonna say they're gonna be, staff centric, I wanna make sure they're on board. So did you get input from the staff saying that they want to do this?
No, despite Corey's question of whether the board authority was needed to create the committee, I wanted to start fresh at a board meeting and then, get a vision here of what we wanted to do. Then, as I'm sort of following the discussion, I'm not really trying to shape this discussion because I don't really have an idea. But as I'm following the discussion, it seems to me that if everyone's going to buy in, it has to be some representative or representatives of all three of our arms. One is the board, one is the staff, and one is the foundation, and possibly community. So to me, this was a starting point. I have not had any discussions lately about it with the staff.
I do definitely recall though what Narina mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
But I also think part of that was they weren't involved in the planning meetings. So
Well,
I don't know, I wouldn't want to speak for them, but
Yeah, I don't want to rehash everything. I don't want to rehash everything, but I do think that they should tell us if this is something that they have the time and
interest.
resources, interest, right, to devote to, because I'm willing to help if they can. Like, 'cause I know they plan their programs sometimes way ahead. So, if we pick a date, they already have like multiple programs, which is what happened last time, that would interfere with the actual library's function, right? That's.
I think this is giving enough lead time that we can plan in advance. I think the problem was before is we were trying to plan a huge event in like under 60 days. Like we picked October and they already had trunk or treat, everything already set up. So I think if we're talking about a spring event now, we might have a good couple of months.
I am hearing Marina though, like
Yeah.
our structure that we have internally would be to talk with our department heads group and say, are we buying into this? And if we're not buying into this, I am comfortable knowing that there is a cafe opening and knowing that there is a yearly programming schedule. And I guarantee you there, I know there was a meeting yesterday where a lot of the youth services stuff for the summer was being planned. And I also kind of agree with Barbara that, 16, 18 months after you reopen, maybe we missed the boat, maybe we just do a normal year and open a cafe. But I heard what you just said, Narina, and I think I should, if this is a living concept, I think I should take it to next week's department heads meeting and find out if it's a living concept,
And if not, I think the alternative would be to just make the cafe a really big thing. We don't have to involve the foundation in that event because it wouldn't be able to sponsor it. But I think that is a huge thing to open and we shouldn't sidetrack that. I mean, that is huge. We're opening a cafe after so many years. I mean, we wanted it for so many years.
Yeah.
And so that would draw people anyways.
Yeah.
I can say that, if I could jump in, I do know that if you're thinking about any kind of event on a weekend, that's gonna be difficult for the staff. For example, we just had Take Your Child to the Library Day, beginning of February, and staffing can be an issue on weekends, so we ended up showing a movie. In years past, we've done something more elaborate, but, if you're thinking about an event on a Saturday, for example, that could be difficult. So I just want to throw that out there.
We'll ask the staff if they're not interested, they're not interested.
Right.
So if that, to me, that makes sense. What,
I think it is a commitment, maybe not just, I mean, we're obviously not getting paid to help out, the foundation's not getting paid. So if you want to be involved, it's because you want to devote some time outside of whatever it is that you're doing. So if they're not, that's totally fine, and I don't think it's our job to push them to do it.
So maybe that's step one, see if we get the buy-in at the department head meeting, and if not, then we can pivot to just the doing a cafe thing, and then that just may
Want just to give them. an
look a little
opportunity
different
To own it.
yeah.
with the foundation, which is fine.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate all that. I don't mean to cut off discussion, but I think I heard a pretty good pretty good plan. Marching orders, if you will. So,
Is there any other old business? Going to new business, we've already dealt with the first item. So we have the LPL website access for David Gilliam.
So, yeah, when we have the fiscal officer position filled, we, and Dave, I'll allow you to obviously correct me if I'm wrong here, but we use the head fiscal officer as the person with log-on authority to the investment website at LPL to monitor the investments. We like to give Dave that access temporarily till we hire a new fiscal officer. Is there more to it than that, Dave? Or-
Well, historically, 7 years ago, you and I opened up the relationship with LPL. And then when Carol came on board, I no longer had access to the website. And now with Tim leaving, whatever. I get mail in the office there with transactional documentation and the statements once a month and that kind of thing. It would just be better if I had access into the website
Yeah.
and also communication opening with Jim Ferranda up at LPL. Not that I would be doing anything on my own, of course, but
Right.
I do keep the records for all the relationship with LPL. And we have established, as the board resolution called for, separate accounting for the quote reserve funds, the $1.4 million that we just transferred up there. That's totally separate in T-bills now from the certificates of deposit. So that didn't change anything at LPL. It's just a matter of the investments. I keep track of it separately now. So, and in the future, if necessary, I can give you any kind of reports about that. But basically, the wishes of the board have been completed as was indicated earlier this evening.
So I think we would just need a motion to.
Is there a motion to?
I would make the motion
I'll
to have
second.
access to LPL for David Gilliam. I think it's a very wise move.
I'll second, Corey.
Is there any discussion?
I just have a question. So would Tim, no,
I think it's one of the things that Tim Riley will still be covering, right, David?
well, that's what I was gonna ask. Will he
Tim
maintain?
has access to the website, but generally we don't bother him with having to do anything
No, not-
relative to the communications like that.
Tim Riley?
Yeah, he won't have it.
Or-
Right, that was my question. Will Tim Riley retain, or is this in place of Tim Riley's access? That was, because he's still, before he was going to a contract role, and now he's still an employee, so I just think we should be clear.
I guess my gut would be that Tim Riley would continue as long as he was employed here to have access to that website.
Okay, so this is an additional access.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion for LPL website access for David Gilliam, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? It passes at 7:59. Okay, and we have, next item is credit card limit increase for CTS.
So this has become a moot point. 2 or 3 days ago, we have one credit card in the building with multiple card holders who have, there's an overall $10,000 credit limit, and then it's divided up by department into smaller increments. Amazon changed the way, and we do most of our ordering through a different company, Baker and Taylor, but Amazon essentially eliminated our ability to be billed. And so we were going to ask you to raise the credit limit so that we could charge things at Amazon. But then they essentially brought it back. So you might say that we misunderstood their change in their account procedure. But as of today, we don't need to raise the credit card limit, so.
Want to have any discussion about what Paul Miller had brought up about the tax breaks for volunteer firefighters? You know that it's a specifically for volunteer firefighters, and I know Paul Miller had mentioned that they used to have volunteer EMTs, but now they're all employees of the town, so.
May I speak to it briefly? So I think everyone probably understands this, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me, but my understanding is that, this is a noble effort to attract and retain firefighters and first responders, but I don't think it will change the amount of taxes that are paid. I think it would just change who pays them. So I think that while it is certainly a noble goal to attract and retain firefighters, if any organization adopts it, it's essentially increases taxes for those taxpayers who are not firefighters or first responders. That's my understanding of how it works. The taxes are a zero-sum game. You're just reducing some people's taxes.
Right. And I remember being on the school board way back when, and we did the same thing for veterans.
Right. And I thought veterans were part of the current proposal, but Paul didn't mention them.
No, I think that was quite a while ago.
Okay.
And the law is written in such an odd way that they have to ask every single taxing entity separately to consider having a hearing on the exemption. So since we are an entity that collects a tax, we're an entity. I mean, even though our tax would be small, obviously the largest taxes would be paid by school, the school district taxes. So, so I don't know. I mean, I just throw that out there if there was any interest on the board for scheduling a hearing on this, to potentially consider giving an exemption to volunteer firefighters.
Kathy?
Yes.
I'd have no objection to getting a little more information. What is the staffing that they're looking to achieve? If you're talking, 5 more firefighters, that's a very small number. If you're talking 50, then it gets bigger. Just basic information. And I think something like a resolution, if I remember correctly, a few months back, didn't the state say that we had to not vote on a resolution such as this, at the first presentation, that we'd have to sort of have time to reflect and reconsider and then come back with more information and actually vote on it. But I think it's a worthwhile effort. I know they're all suffering. And, but we sort of need the kinds of numbers that we'd be talking about. Our contribution, as you said, would be fairly small, but I would certainly support at least looking into it.
Well, I wasn't saying we should vote tonight. It was just, something in the future. I know that the town, like I mentioned, the town has a proposed local law to do this, and they're having a hearing on March 21st. So, I mean, we could kind of see how that goes and, consider doing it.
Excuse me, Kathy, to that point though, can we get some information that's not from an advocate respectfully? Like, just sort of like, what are the required elements we would have to hold a hearing and pass a resolution, right? Like, I guess this is my first time hearing about it. And I would just want more info, like, does it require all of these entities who are listed to all agree? Or would they get partial? Like, how do we get more info?
Oh, well,
And when does it have to be
probably,
done by?
like, I mean, I've been told that the law is pretty complicated and it's not something that you just like just vote and do. I mean, yeah, it is necessary to get some more information. I could find out, I could probably get a copy of it or,
Is there a
or
deadline
whatever.
by which we have to take action? Like, what's the time implication? Like, when do we have to decide?
I think the tax, the operative date for the taxes for this year, I mean, it would be like March 1st. So obviously it wouldn't apply for
Right,
this year, but sometime in the future.
so it can be enacted at any time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I
okay,
don't,
that's what I was
there's
trying
not,
to.
there's not a, any kind of, time pressure. I just bring it up just because it's something that, I know that they have to come to every single entity that has, that, so it's just kind of, that's why they're coming here because, we collect tax, so.
So I have just an observation and a suggestion. I can certainly forward to the board a cut and paste of anything the enterprise comes out with on this to keep you informed. And then to me, the question, Barbara, you ask a good question, would put an even, I think, better question in my mind, which is two numbers. How many firefighters are there currently and how many taxpayers are there currently? I mean, if we're talking about 1 or 2% of taxpayers, then the resulting burden on the other 98 or 99% of taxpayers isn't much. But if 10% of the taxpayers are firefighters, then maybe it is a significant burden to each household that is not a
They
firefighter.
probably wish that they had that many firefighters.
Yep. So anyway, I think those numbers should come out at some point. I hadn't been planning to go on March 21st, but maybe I will. So,
Well, you can always watch it on cable or on the website.
okay.
Or you can go. All right, any more public input? No more public input.
Do you have a motion?
Is there any, there's
Oh,
no
sorry.
further business before the board? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Rena? Second, Tori. Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed?
I do like to do that at chamber board meetings. Yes, I'm opposed.
8:08.
I'd like to stay here.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Right.
During all the business.
Bye, Barbara. Enjoy things. Yeah, I think so.
I'm sure you can. Sabrina. Yeah, I got missing very cold weather.
Yeah, it might be the same.
It's funny,